Here are 3 clips of rain. One of them has been replaced with bacon sizzling. Try to guess which one it is. If you've chosen any one of these clips, then you would be incorrect, because all of them were replaced with bacon sizzling. This was a test presented in the TEDx talk The Beautiful Lie of Sound Design, featuring Tezos Fredzolas, the owner and CEO of Soundsnap.com. The point of the test was not to challenge people's expectations, but instead to show that the mind doesn't need something realistic to be immersed, rather something it can relate to. This is incredibly prevalent within video games. Over a year ago, I challenged myself to make a video essay about something I love, but by the same token, to explore further and highlight to others this hidden aspect of the medium. Interestingly, while I have seen articles and videos covering sound design, I realize it doesn't get the attention other elements of video games receive. That is my motivation for this project. Since then, I have done lots of research, including 2 exclusive video interviews with industry-leading professionals from Valve Corporation in Seattle, USA, and Ninja Theory in Cambridge, UK. I have always appreciated sound design in video games. It adds another dimension to them. If you look at a silent film or even a video game without any sound, you can see the events unfolding in front of you, but because there is no audible feedback to back up and facilitate that event, it can feel fake and discordant. Just like my friendship choices. So, today I will be highlighting how video games incorporate audio to sell their world to the player, the importance of it within the video game medium, and 2 real-world examples from industry professionals. To what extent does the implementation of audio choices affect a game's immersive experience for the players? Before we move on, however, let's first clarify this. What exactly counts as good sound design? This is Jeep Barnett, a game designer and programmer at Valve, and also one of my interviewees for this series. In this part of my interview with him, I was looking to know his opinion on audio from the perspective of a game designer. What do you think counts as good sound design?
That's a really tough question. When I'm playing a game, if I hear audio and it just sounds very derivative or very boring, or like something that I've just heard a million times over, I get bored with the game really quick. Where if what I'm hearing in the game sounds like it was explicitly built just for that game, and that it's just another piece of that puzzle that fits together, it just makes me, just feel it's like I'm experiencing something new and something entertaining. Good design draws you into what you're doing and makes you feel like you're seeing something new that you haven't seen before. It lifts the visuals off of the monitor and makes them feel more real because you're hearing something that matches what you see. Having what you hear match what you see, but also having it sound like something that you haven't heard before. I think that's really, really important.
Funnily enough, audio hasn't always been a part of the video game medium, and while many attribute Pong as the first video game, that isn't actually correct. Let's look back to the 1940s. Physicists Thomas T. Goldsmith Jr. and Cecil Ray Mann were specializing in the development of cathode ray tube readings of electronic signal outputs. They decided to use this idea for an entertainment contraption dubbed the, quote, cathode ray amusement device. Catchy, I know. This is controversially known as the first video game, and was consequently at the forefront of what would eventually become a multi-billion-dollar industry. The game was inspired by World War II radar displays that involved the player using knobs to aim missiles at targets printed on a clear screen overlay. Unfortunately, there is no working model as of today. However, what I can say is the device had no digital audio output at all. This was mostly to do with the fact that the game did not make use of code and was purely electrical, therefore making it near impossible to implement audio feedback. As time progressed, the video game medium evolved.
Look, Daddy, I beat you!
Yes, Jenny, this is why your mother and I agreed a long time ago that Timmy was the better child.
Eventually, audio became easier to implement in games. However, limited hardware meant that sound in games at the time had to be simple. For example, the 1979 game Asteroids used beeps for the background as its soundtrack. Composers and sound designers soon realized they had to be smart with how they approached the implementation of audio. Due to the limiting hardware, composers had to make music simplistic as system resources were scarce. One way of achieving this was through pentatonic scaling. This was one of the first notable examples of sound being employed for psychological effect in video games, as its simplicity made music more memorable and iconic. The adjective pentatonic comes from the Greek word penta, meaning 5, and tonic, meaning tone. It consists of 5 notes with 1 octave. Here is an audio sample for reference. At first glance, this does not seem like much, but when you delve deeper into the history and influence this technique has had, there is a surprising amount to uncover. In fact, it is believed that the pentatonic scale was actually used way back in ancient times. The forming tones of the scale were derived from the concept of the solar systems and its 5 planets by the mathematician Pythagoras in his theory called music of the spheres. Historical musical instruments, such as bone flutes made out of bones of birds, have been found to be tuned to the pentatonic scale, with the theory that they are about 50,000 years old. A major pentatonic scale is used for great effect by communicating if the player is on the right track. For instance, if the player has a power-up or important item, the game can reflect this through a pentatonic motif. Listen to the famous Take This from The Legend of Zelda as an example. If a player completes an objective, the audio could adapt to these circumstances by playing a triumphant music piece. Super Mario Bros.' level complete motif is a very popular example of this. Both of these practices are still used in games to this day. The examples I used from The Legend of Zelda and Super Mario Bros. Have helped Nintendo achieve cultural impact, and judging that they are as popular as ever even after 30 years, they have really stood the test of time, with both being stuck with players long after the credits roll. I think the reason why these motifs are so memorable can be traced back to the fact that composers managed to use the technique of pentatonic scaling to create memorable tracks due to the 5 notes in any order to create a musical piece. Because of their simplicity, they can be much easier to remember when compared to more complex and extravagant music. This also explains why many people don't have the same fondness for musical tracks within today's video games compared to earlier ones, as hardware at the time just couldn't handle it. Back to the focus on mechanical audio, as previously discussed. It was the origin of emotionally manipulating players to deliver emotional responses. Noise in pinball machines was and still is often created in a way called the knocker, or free game noise. This is achieved through the use of a solenoid to physically drive a metal rod into the side of the pinball machine to grab the player's attention. To explain in more detail on why this works and how it grabs the player's attention, here is a quick explanation from sound designer and composer David Garcia of Ninja Theory.
Audio it has a special place in how it connects with your brain. So imagine a situation that you're in the street and you see a tiger. You cannot listen. You rely on your eyes. You will analyze the situation and you will see, okay, there is a tiger that is 100 meters away. It will take time to you to analyze the situation. If you have a tiger and you cannot see and you listen to a massive roar, you will not think on everything. You will jump and you will run like crazy. When we lived in the caves long time ago, they were our alarms.
This was and still is part of the design when it comes to arcade and pinball machines, and was often a significant factor in determining their success, much like adverts try to captivate your attention today. While there are relatively few reminiscences of old audio techniques in use today, the example of pinball machines and the cultural impact of pentatonic scaling does show that audio as a whole can still make an impact on players even after all these years. Now, let's jump ahead in time to see some more modern examples of how audio is used to immerse the player. As this is the first time I have undertaken a project like this, I would be incredibly grateful for any constructive feedback you leave on this video, as it will really help me when making future parts of the series. You can be notified on the release of future parts of the series by subscribing with notifications turned on. In addition, you can also keep up to date with extra info on the next video by following me on Twitter, which should appear now-ish. Oh, there it is. Anyway, thank you very, very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next part.